G'day guys, Darren here again. How's it going? So today we're going to do a mod that I've been looking forward to for a long time. I haven't had the time to do it, but I think today's the day. So it is a SuperCIC region-free mod, switchless mod with 50-60 Hertz switching and region-free. We're going to control the whole thing off a PIC 16F630. I've got a couple of these already flashed with the right code. I've got some wire, I've got some parts. I'll run on through all that stuff later. Most importantly, we've got a Super Nintendo in front of us, a PAL Super Nintendo, and this one does work. I've got it plugged in temporarily just to a computer monitor in front of me running composite video. I'll just do a final check and make sure it does actually work. Just got a game in, and yeah, we're off and running. Okay, cool. So just do a quick check, power that guy off, pull the card out, pull everything out, and before you get started with any mods on a Super Nintendo, when you disconnect the power, you've got to be careful to discharge the main cap up in here, and the way to do it is to quickly just flick the switch on and off one more time, and you'll see it discharge through the LED. So just watch the LED down here, and we saw that flicker just once. That just drains all the power out of the cap, and it's just a lot safer to work on. You really don't want to short anything out and have all that power discharge and potentially fry something or hurt yourself. So do that. So now we need to pull this thing apart. We'll see what we're looking at. We'll see what the revision of the board is. Hopefully it's a standard 2-chip model, not the rarer 1-chip, because this mod works best on the 2 chips, and all the guides out there, and the one I'm going to step you through today is based on a 2-chip variety. So what you're going to need to do is flip it over, grab yourself a game bit tool, which is available off the internet. I'll put a link below where you can buy this from. And we need a 4.5mm. That's for Super Nintendo. Grab yourself a handle. You can use like a normal screwdriver handle, and pull these security screws out. So I'll just go ahead and do that, and I'll come back in a sec. So for your reference, there's 6 screws, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Pull those out and we'll flip it back over. Alright, so you'll end up with 6 screws, all the security game bit style, and just put them aside in a container. I've got this one here. I label mine up all with separate labels so I know what goes where. I'll add that to the SNES container, and I know how to put it all back together. So let's go ahead and pull the lid off. Just lift straight off once you've got the screws out, and we can see the insides. And let's dig a bit further and we'll see what revision we're working with. So what you need to do now is grab a Phillips head screwdriver, quite a large one, and we'll take out the switch. We'll take out these screws around this shield. We'll lift out the eject mechanism, take off the heat shield off the regulator. Just strip it right down and we can see what we're working with. So I'll do that now. It's not much fun to watch me do this, but yeah, I'll put it in fast forward. So let me get on with that now. Alright, so we can see that we've got a 2-chip variety. We've got the CPU and we've got the 2 PPUs. So this is PPU 1, as it says right on top, and PPU 2. So if you don't have this chip layout or something very similar at this point, if you've got one big square chip right here, you've got the rarer 1-chip model, and this mod won't work on that particular revision. And to be honest, that's quite a collectible Super Nintendo. I'd probably put that one aside in your collection, pick up another one, hopefully it's a 2-chip, and mod that one instead. So just stop here if you don't have this layout with these 2 chips. Okay, so all the screws are out, and we'll need to go a little bit further and take off this heat shield. So if you look on the side here, you've got the 7805 voltage regulator producing 5 volts. That gets very hot. You know, your incoming voltage comes in on the plug, and this will step the voltage down to 5 volts and feed the board. In doing that, these get very hot. So it's screwed onto this piece of aluminium to dissipate the heat. So that's sort of what that does. But yeah, you can just unscrew the side screw there, and we'll take the whole thing apart. You sort of have to remember though, you know, while testing this as we go through, this really should be connected. So it's going to get quite hot. So you sort of can only really run them for a very short amount of time while testing. I wouldn't really run them for too long. It'll just get too hot. So. Okay, then our shield comes off. Okay guys, so we've got a decision to make right now. There's 2 ways to tackle this mod. The first way is we completely remove the CIC chip, which is labeled U8 down here. I'll just do a zoom in for you. So chip U8, you can see it there, U8 on the side. Yours might be in a slightly different position, but that's the CIC. We need to either A, completely remove this chip, or lift some pins. To be honest, I think removing the whole chip is easier in the long run, so that's what I recommend you do. And I'm going to heat the soldering iron up, and we'll get started on taking that chip off. Okay, so ideally you would have a chisel tip soldering iron with quite a lot of surface area, so you can get a lot of heat penetration into this. I don't, I've just got a small tip here and it's quite dirty and worn out, so I'm going to have a go at it. But yeah, you really want a chisel tip if you've got one. And some solder wick, just some basic solder wick to get rid of the solder off the pins. Run it along the pins, make sure it's all melting, and then just hold the wick in place and really just try and remove all that solder. That's the aim. Put your soldering iron on an angle like this and really try to get all that solder off. What I ended up doing to get this chip off, and it is off now, so I used the braid and I used the iron to just remove a fair bit of that solder. Then I actually had a really cheap hot air gun. This is like a workshop one, like a paint removal sort of gun, but it goes up to 600 degrees, so it's extremely hot. Just a cheap brand, it's all you really need. And I didn't do it here on the bench. I've changed the bench coverings here. I had that black stuff, now I've moved to the soldering pad, but I did it on the floor, just on concrete. I just gently nozzled the hot air at the chip. I actually did it from that direction. You don't want to get too much on this chip here. You can cover that with some aluminium foil or something if you like. Just get the chip here really hot, and then basically you'll see the solder points sort of shine up as they melt, and then just with a set of tweezers, just like on the side of the chip like that, I just moved it aside. So it was literally like that, heated it up with the hot air and just lifted it off. So that's how I did it. You might have a proper hot air desoldering gun. You might have a proper soldering iron with a chisel tip that you can use the braid. However you decide to do it, it's pretty easy. One of these little cheap hot air guns does the job though. So now we can definitely go back over the pins and clean them up a little bit with the braid. So just find a nice clean bit of braid, put some more flux on the pins and just go over them all and really try and clean it up as best as possible. Okay, and then I've cleaned that up with some isopropyl alcohol as well. So I think that's a pretty clear shot of the pads. It's pretty hard to hold this camera still, but yeah, try and get them as clean as that, or better, and just inspect the traces while you're there. Make sure everything's all good and you haven't damaged anything. On to the next step, we need to lift some pins on the PPU1 and PPU2. So to control the 60 Hertz switching, we need to lift pin 30 on PPU2. So just look at your chip there, make sure it's PPU2. pin 30. It's labeled on the board, so it's nice and easy. And it's right up here. I'll give you a zoom in on that. So the very end pin on the corner with the extra solder on it, we're going to lift that one first and just solder it, desolder it with the iron, get a blade or a nice fine blade to lift that pin up. And then we're also going to do the same thing over here on PPU 1. And over here on the PPU 1, we're going to lift pin 24. So you need to count backwards. You've got 30 as well labeled, 29, 28, 27, 26, 25, 24. You sort of count back and lift that up. So I'll go ahead and lift both these pins. I'll keep the camera zoomed like this and hopefully you can see what I do. Okay, so that's pin 30 lifted on that one. Once you've lifted it slightly off the board, just go back under it with a blade like that and just sort of lift it up a little bit higher. Don't bend it too far vertical because it'll just snap off. Then you're in all sorts of trouble. We're going to put a little bit of solder onto that pin in a minute just so we can solder a wire to it, but I'm going to move straight on to pin 24. So guys, this pin 24 is really, really difficult. It's tiny, it's hard to see. Yeah, you're just gonna have to really just take your time with this one. Get a nice fine tip on your soldering iron, get it cleaned up, get it hot. I really should have put a new tip in today, but I didn't. I use a blade like that. I count backwards. I put the blade in on that sort of angle, get it sort of wedged in between 23 and 24. And I'm gonna push the blade that way, sort of down and up, and pivot the pin up as I melt the solder. So yeah, it's really difficult. Further reference, you'll see the dot there on the board. It's actually the pin just to the left of that dot. I'll put up a high resolution close-up photo once I've done this, just after this exact step. So okay, that actually went better than expected. So hopefully you could see that. That's now lifted. So I'm happy with that. So hopefully you can see the two pins that I've lifted. Okay, so our next step is we're going to get some very fine wire and we're going to join pin 30 to pin 24 and then leave a bit of an overhang on the wire just so we can connect it to our chip. So to prepare our PIC chip, this is already flashed with the code. So if yours isn't, you need to flash it. And I'm not going to run through the flashing process today. You can buy them already done. I'll put a link to that in the video, or you can flash them yourself if you know how. What I am going to do though is bend all the legs upwards and straight out. It just makes it much easier to work with. Bend them all up, squeeze them and sort of like straighten them all out. We're going to actually lay this chip on its belly, so that's why we lifted the legs. Make sure that the notch is facing up. It's really important. The notch faces up. Then we know the orientation of our pins. So I'm going to mount it right on the CPU here. I'm going to grab some double-sided tape in a minute and just put a little bit on the back side and we'll stick it on top of the CPU. You could stick it down on the board somewhere, but I think here will be fine. Okay, so I've just cut some small double-sided tape. I cleaned the top of the chip with some more isopropyl just so it can stick really well. I also cleaned the underneath of this one, cut it to the rough size, and we'll just stick that on. So put that right there, it's really secure, and then we can solder to it. All right, so let's put our pins on. We'll do these ones first. So let me get some wire. I use AWG 30 wrapping wire, really fine wire. I think you need to on this project. It's just really delicate work. Okay, so I've soldered that wire in place. We're running off 30 up to 24 and looping back to this pin here of the CIC. Okay, so the next wire we need to run is off the top pin up here, and we need to run ground to that. So we can just steal ground off this SRAM work RAM chip over here, pin 64. So the top pin here to pin 64. I'm just going to use a blue wire as well, and just like that, just put a small link in place. So the next one we need to run is off the CIC pads themselves, pin 8. Well, let's just call it pin 8, but it's, you know, pad 8, which is just one in from the end there. And we need to run a 10K resistor off that, up to ground as well. So you can theoretically take ground from kind of anywhere you like, but the other end of this chip up here, this workaround chip, is also ground, that very end pin. So that's pin 33. So I'm just going to run it up to there, put a bit of heat shrink tubing over it, and that should be fine. So I'll just do that one. And just like that. So I've soldered it across with a bit of heat shrink. I accidentally damaged the pad down there, so I've just soldered the wire to the rear via just behind it. Yeah, just be careful, they're really delicate, really hard to work with. Pin 1 down here on the bottom CPU, that's actually 5 volts. And we need to give 5 volts to pin 1 and pin 4. So it's easy just to run a little jump between the board pin 1 up to this pin 1 and across to pin 4. I'm going to use red wire. I'll put this in place and I'll show you what I mean. So just like that, just a small bit of red wire bridging 1 into 4 and down the side to pin 1 on the board. So have a close look at that and just run that little bridge, quite easy. Okay, so the next one is basically a ground wire off pin 13 up here on the pick, right down to the base end here of the resistor. So just run a wire from that pin 13 to the bottom of that resistor. We'll just solder straight onto the resistor leg. So just slide the shield up if you need to, and from there to there. And just like that. So I've run the ground wire just up off the resistor leg, under that loop of the 5 volt feed, and straight onto that 13th pin up there. So pretty tidy. I might have made that run a little bit short, a little bit tight, but you know, you can just adjust your wire to sort of run straight across. It gets really fiddly, so take your time. Right, so the next one we have to run is off pin 2 here of the pick to pin 6 of this S-clock chip up here. I'm going to use a brown wire. I'm going to run straight across. I'll make sure it doesn't short off that 5 volts. I might come up the back there or out the front. I'll probably come out the front actually, like that. Run it straight across and down into that pin 6 down there. So I'll put that in place and I'll show you the result. And just like that. So got a brown wire coming off pin 2, loops over, and it connects into pin 6 of the S-CLK little chip there. It's just an easy spot to run, and that works fine. Okay, so the next one is off the pick pin 11 down to pad 10 on the original CIC location. So number 10 is the big one at the end over here, which is really easy to solder to, and 11's just underneath our 50-60 hertz switching wire. So I'll put that in place. I'm just going to use a yellow wire for that one, and I'll show what I mean. Okay, so as you can see, I've put the yellow wire from pad 10 up to pin 11 of the pick. That's it for that one. Nice and easy. Okay, so the next one is off the pin just underneath. It's pin 10, and we have to run it just around here, around the board, up to pin 1 up on this this large pad up here. So that's an easy one as well. I'm probably going to use I don't know, blue wire again for that, or I'll pick another color and just run it up around the corner. Okay, so I ended up using pink wire. I think, you know, I thought I had enough blue already, so I ran pink, and I ran it off that pin 10 right around to pin 1 up in there. I ran it on an angle because the next one we need to do is pin 2 down in here, the one next to it, and it all gets a little bit squashy, so I'll come out straight like that and run around to the next pin. So that was 10 to 1, and the next one we need to do is 9 to 2. Just like that. So we've got the pink running down to pin 1 and the orange one running down to pin 2 right next to it. So just run those 2 loops and we're on to the last pin on this side. Okay, and the next one we need to run is off the last pin, which is pin 8 up here. And we need to run it down to pin 11 on the pads, so right next to the yellow wire I've got, just the one in pin 8 to pin 11. I'm going to use green wire. Haven't used that before, so that looks like a fairly good choice. I'm just going to run it sort of off that pin and just probably up the edge of the board right here, and then straight into that pin. So just like that, just the last one, the green one off the pin 8, right around to pin 11. Just sort of ran it along the edge, tucked it straight in. Right, so the last few wires, and don't worry, we're getting close to the end now. The last few wires are for the LED and kind of like, yeah, pretty much the LED switching. And they come off the bottom couple of pins down here on the pick. But I think at this stage we should probably move our attention to the LED. So here it is here. So we've got the LED, it's in the board, right? Some people will tell you to desolder all these points and pull this whole thing apart because it's all soldered down, but I don't think we need to. I think if we're clever and lucky, really, if we desolder these 2 points, which is the back of the LED, we can probably pull the LED out and then we can solder our new one straight on. So I'm going to give that a shot. Let's desolder these 2 points and pull the LED out. That's our goal. All you need to really do that is a basic desoldering pump. So if you just heat up those points with your iron, put it on, and basically suck out the solder. So, okay, so I just had a few attempts at that. A really good tip is actually to add solder onto the points first. And I know it sounds a bit crazy, right? But I think you reflow the solder, add a lot more to it, and then when you come to pump it off, it just flows a lot easier. So that's what I did. I added more solder. Now the whole LED is loose. So if we sort of push down on these pins and get underneath it, we should be able to get it out. Almost. You know, we could cut these legs at this point, but there we go. Almost hit me in the eye. Almost. All right, that's it. So one of them broke, but one of them came out pretty right. So that's what we ended up with. Throw that one away, and that's the easy way to do it. You don't need to pull the whole thing apart. That's crazy talk. Crazy. So let's grab our new LED. Just sort of bend up the legs like this, you know, one center one facing down, and the other 2 will connect with resistors in a minute. You want to put the center one into that sort of that leftmost hole there and sit it sort of in the factory position. So, you know, you can adjust this to get it to sit right, but that's the ultimate position we're aiming for. And then just solder it in place. So just that one center leg, that's all we're doing at this stage. And then we'll test our legs. So we're not going to reconnect these 2 at the moment, especially not down to that point down there. That's that's a constant voltage that we don't want because that'll give it a constant color. So we want to keep our 2 legs separate. The best way to do that is to run just 2 wires off them and a bit of conduit sort of heat shrink tube, just the blue stuff. I don't have really small stuff, but this will be fine. So we'll connect up a resistor and just shield it like that. So I'll go ahead and do that now. So just like that, one red, one green wire for the colors, and I'll put the heat shrink tube on now, and then we'll look at soldering it to the pick. Okay, so what we should do next is put on the 220 ohm resistors. So the LED needs 220 ohms on each wire. It needs it on the green and the red going up to the LED. If you don't put them in, you don't get the right colors. So what we need to do is just, we'll put our little 220s in place, and this pin here is the green, and this pin here is the red, or the orangey red. So I'm just going to put 2 resistors sort of coming off the chip like that, and then the other end of the wires will join up to our red and green. And we might have to test this out and get it right. Bit of experimentation, but we'll get the right colors. And but yeah, so I guess the point is don't finish the job up completely until we've fully tested it and got the colors right. Make sure, you know, the green matches the right frequency. All right, so let me just solder this in place and we'll get it ready for testing. Okay, so that's in place. We've got our red and green wires coming off our LED. The center pin was soldered onto the board. They run down through our 220 ohm resistors to the relevant pins, 6 and 7. There's one final step we need to do in relation to this LED, and that's run a jumper wire from this bottom pin 8 right up to the top one, the ground one, or just take ground from somewhere else. I'm pretty sure that loop needs to be in place, but I'm probably going to give this a test right now, and we'll work out any bugs or any faults we've got. Okay, so I've got the shield in place, and I've just put the board back into the base just before we give it a quick test. I think it's important that you put your shield in just to give it a proper test and make sure your clearances are all right. Now I ran into a little problem. My resistors didn't quite fit under the lid, so as you can see, I've just relocated my resistors out to here, right next to the LED, and the wires will simply run just out of this natural hole in the case. So that's a really good easy way to route the wires, so you could probably do that. One thing I also want to mention is when I relocated the resistors, I just thought that I'd change one of the values. So this one here is still 220 ohms on the red, but this one here on the left, this underside one, that's now 100 ohms on the green. So I've just switched that out to 100. You know, I did a bit of reading, and that's what people recommend as well. So 220 and 100. I've plugged it all in. I've got one screw in the switch just to hold it in place. So I'll get the cover back on this. I'll take it over to the TV, and we'll plug it in with RGB SCART, and we'll have a look. Okay, so we're back over at the testing area near the TV. Got our Luva Kalita 4071, I think this one is, with the E3000 chassis. So it looks awesome with RGB SCART. That's how I've got it plugged in. So before we plug a game in, let's take a look at the LED colors here and see if we can see the color difference. We might still have to play around with the LED color, the LED and the resistor values. So there's green. So press and hold. Yeah, you can actually see a difference. So green, orange, red, green, orange, red. Okay. So let's leave it in red, which is going to be 60 hertz. So the green's going to be 50, red's 60, and orange is an automatic mode, which I'll post the instructions for that in the video below this so you can read up how to use that. It's a pretty cool feature actually, but for this purpose we'll just run 50 and 60 manually. So alright, let's power it off and we'll get a Japanese game. We've got Legend of Zelda Super Famicom. So we left that at 60, so this should fire up in 60. And here we go, 60 hertz. It's a bit of a slow intro, this one. I'll just see if I can push the button. All right. Okay, so fired it up and 60 hertz. Looking at the top of the TV, we've got full screen, and that's all working nicely. So yeah, it's definitely a Japanese game. Out of interest, let's just flick this one to 50. So press and hold, let it cycle a little bit, and then release at the green. TV just went a bit nuts and flickered. Oh, it's still flickering actually. It's just settling down. Yeah, it seems to do that for a while. They're right settled. And yeah, we've got a border here, so we're in 50 hertz. So Japanese at 50, Japanese at 60. Sorry, Japanese at 60 and Japanese at 50. So that's cool. While we're in 50, let's power it off and go to a PAL game. We've got Super Mario All-Stars. Plug that in. Power it on, so we're still in 50. Yeah, it's like it does a bit of a mode check when you first turn it on. I'm not exactly sure what's going on there. But there you go, 50 hertz. We'll get our borders, so it does look good though, it looks great. So 50 hertz works fine on a PAL game, which is great. We didn't get any this card is not suitable errors or anything like that. Now the big test is, let's run this in 60. Orange, red, green, orange, red. Okay, get the timing of that right. The screen flickered. I'll push the start button. And there we go. So we're 60 Hertz, full screen border. And sorry, no border, I should say. And yeah, we're off and running. So very good. Japanese and PAL running at 50 and 60. So it's all pretty cool. The orange mode, the automatic mode, I'm not exactly sure how that works right now. I think it does an automatic detect of your game. So if it's a PAL game, it'll boot at 50 and then switch to 60 and vice versa. So we could test that, but I don't know if it's going to work. Let's give it a quick test. Okay, so I've just put this into automatic mode. We'll see if we can demo that. So I've got a different game now. I've got Castlevania 4. It's a PAL game. So what this should do is it should detect that it's PAL, start up in 50. I'm not sure if the color will be green when it first boots or not, but it'll start the console in 50, and then a couple of seconds later it'll flick to 60, which is really awesome. So it does an automatic detection. I think it does the same thing with you know, US games and stuff as well. So some games need that. They need to start at 50 Hertz, then cycle to 60 to bypass some more copy protection and so forth. So let's give this a go. I'll power it on. I'll quickly show you the color of the LED, and then I'll pan back and you can see what happens on the screen. So, all right, so it's like auto color comes up. It's a slightly slow game to start, this one. There it goes. So I did the mode change and we're in 60 Hertz. Yeah, cool. Top and bottom, full screen, no borders. So yeah, that's a great mode actually. I really like that mode. I'm going to probably mess around with the resistor values and get really clear colors. The 100 and 220 are good, but you know, they could be better. Green, yeah, see, they're a bit close together. So with this combination, we can run any game from any region. I've got myself an EverDrive card here with a SD, and it's full of ROMs. So I'll plug that in, fire him up. I'll just put that into 60 Hertz manually. Okay, so there we go. It's in 60 Hertz. So I've got the 240p test suite actually loaded onto this EverDrive at the moment. And there it is. 240p test suite, NTSC. Alright, so without getting into this in too much detail, this is going to be a video for another day. It allows you to sort of calibrate your TV and just run through really cool test patterns and scroll tests and lag tests and all sorts of stuff. So just pulled up a grid line crosshatch sort of pattern, and yeah, you can see my TV is yet to be calibrated properly at 60 Hertz. The top and bottom here aren't quite right, and there's also a wave, like an indent wave on that edge. So they're all things we can really easily fix. But you know, the good thing about this test suite is it lets you run some really cool different tests. I like this scroll test, is cool. It's like the Sonic the Hedgehog background, so allows you to see like any ripples or any wobbles in your image as things scroll. So that one's great as well, and that's a USA ROM. So you know, this runs pretty much any ROM you throw at it, which is awesome. It's what we wanted. So that's it for the video, guys. I think we've wrapped it up. We've demoed it, and everything seems to be working. Just the resistor values I'd still play around with. I don't know the optimal ones to run right now, but I'll post them once I've worked it out. But that's it, guys. I hope you can get your switchless mod installed and running in your Super Nintendo. Well worth doing. It is a bit difficult, but with a bit of patience and just, you know, take your time. It's not that difficult. Just one wire at a time, and you'll be fine. So thanks for watching, and as always, I'll aim to post up another video again here soon. Alright guys, see you later.